Miloni Bhatt. As India marches towards its 100th year as a thriving democracy and one of the top economies of the world, what we do now matters. With a population of over 1 billion people, how are we going to be able to chart growth which is inclusive, equitable and sustainable and also marked by social progress? Well, so at the Economic Times, we bring to you ET India Rising, powered by Visa, a series of conversations with 12 of India's most influential policy and corporate leaders who chart out the roadmap and agenda for India at 100. And today we are very pleased to have with us Mr. Dinesh Khara. He's the chairman of the State Bank of India. He's a career banker and now in his 4th decade with the bank. Mr. Khara, welcome.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
So right now, many people across the world are going through what is being called as a cost of living crisis, where they cannot afford daily necessities. Businesses are also struggling and economies are struggling. In January 2023, when the World Economic Forum report had come out, you had said that some countries of the world will face a shallow recession, but India is much better placed. What is your assessment right now of the global macroeconomic situation, and what are the things that India needs to do to keep its growth steady?
I think my assessment remains the same, what it was some time back when I interacted with you. I still believe that maybe some of the developed economies may have some shallow recession. There could be a possibility that countries like US might miss the recession too. The only challenge is that they need to address their supply side constraints. I think they are very much on the top of it, and hopefully let's see how the things will evolve. But as far as India is concerned, I would say that it is recording very, very encouraging growth numbers under the given circumstances. And the kind of visibility which we have in terms of the demand and also the focus for various industrial activities which are being encouraged by the government and also the initiatives being taken by the private sector, that gives me a confidence that I think for foreseeable future, India should continue to be the growth engine for the globe.
All right. India has an aim of becoming a $5 trillion economy by 2025. Given the current global macroeconomic situation and the squeeze on investments, do you see us being able to meet that target?
See, we have already become 3.5 trillion economy. Earlier, we were growing almost about 1 trillion in about 3 years. For last 2 years, we have seen that we are growing at about 750 billion a year. So that kind of a growth trajectory very clearly means that another 2 years, we should be in a position to add on another 1.5 trillion. So ideally speaking, we should be there. This is what my expectation is. And I think in all likelihood, I would say that we should be around that number.
Which are the sectors or areas where you see growth coming from?
Majorly, there are 3 sectors. Core sector will continue to witness a decent growth. The reason behind is the focus on the infrastructure creation in the economy. The second important sector which will probably witness another growth is the EVs, batteries, chip manufacturing. So all this will be the other sectors. It's a group of these industries which will record decent growth. And I think the kind of focus which is there for making India as a important manufacturing country in the globe by introducing PLI and also by attracting many of the global manufacturers to the country. So that will be the third important lever which will help us in achieving this kind of growth.
So, you said that India is in a much better spot compared to many other economies. But, we have, among the many problems that we have, one is, of course, the massive income disparity and, of course, the challenge of unemployment. In our roadmap as a, thriving democracy at 2047, what are the structural reforms that we need to put in place to address these 2 issues?
I think one, of course, is the focus on the digitization. It will certainly help us in ensuring that the democratization of the payment system, which we have witnessed, and also when it comes to the flow of various entitlements, that will happen through the digitization, so which will also ensure that the much lesser leakages in the system. And to my mind, when it comes to the employment disparities, perhaps the kind of focus which is now coming into manufacturing, and also the manufacturing is likely to be very broad based. Apart from that, many of the states are embarking upon a journey for a significant growth in economic activity in their respective areas. So eventually what it looks like is that irrespective of the state and the geography, perhaps development is a common theme. And for achieving that development, manufacturing for such a large population, manufacturing is the only key which will help us in addressing the employment challenges. And that is perhaps one of the reasons why a very special focus is there on PLI. And the way we are seeing the leading manufacturers from across the globe are evincing interest in this economy. To my mind, it appears to be a reality that will see much better employment conditions going forward. I think the services will continue to be the major focus area of growth and the growth engine, but alongside manufacturing will also pick up. And in addition to that, we are seeing a change in complexion in the rural economy too, because when it comes to logistics, there is a lot of emphasis. Even Government of India has come out with the Agri Infrastructure Development Fund, which is $1 trillion rupees fund. Likewise, now there are many agri startups which are coming up. There are many aggregators who are coming in the rural economy. So all this will also change the complexion of the rural economy. In addition to that, with the help of digitization, the rural customer will be much more informed in terms of the price behavior for their crops. So I think to that extent, the uncertainties which they were facing all this while, even that will be behind them. So I would say that these are the major levers of the journey, which will probably ensure that India in the year 2047 is much more equitable and much more developed.
Many had said that the diversification of supply chains, away from China will benefit India. And while India seems to have done well when it has come to tech exports, but there are other economies like Vietnam, say like a Taiwan, which are proving to be very competitive when other countries are looking at alternative imports, right? And we have our own challenges, with our import tariffs and of course with the issues around logistics. How and do you think India will at all be able to leverage this China plus one strategy of global majors?
My thoughts are that we are addressing the logistics challenges, and also the PM's Gati Shakti program is nothing but declogging the infrastructure. The kind of focus which is there for the port sector, development of the port sector, development of roads. So all this will eventually get reflected into the logistic efficiencies and the way we are coming out with the warehousing capacity in the country. So I think eventually this will address the logistic challenges. When you talk about Vietnam and Taiwan, so when it comes to, they have got a limited capacity in terms of their manpower. They have got limited capacity in terms of the geographical area where they are located. So naturally, they have already started facing some constraints. So I think as against that, we are blessed with much better and better skilled manpower also. And I think that will help us in addressing the challenges which many of the global manufacturers are facing when they are having their production units in Vietnam and Taiwan. And I would say that the governments are very, very pragmatic, union as well as state governments, and they are in a position to attract the investment from many of the leading global players. So that itself is a reflection that India is a country on their radar and they are very keenly pursuing it.
Right, and government has also set up its target for growth coming out, through the Atmanirbhar Bharat, the data localization, as you said, the push on manufacturing. But each of these sectors will require the long-term lending, and these are all underpinned by a very strong banking sector. What is the role that you see SBI play, when it comes in terms of lending to these sectors, and also in terms of, strengthening the banking sector in India?
We feel very proud in claiming to be the proxy to the Indian economy because we are present in all the sub-segments of the Indian economy. And having got a presence across the country, we are in a position to have a feel of the ground, and we are in a position to offer the products and services which are required for achieving the country's ambition and aspirations. That continue to be our core theme, and we'll be pursuing it very actively. And I'm quite hopeful that we will be a very active player in the country's journey towards becoming a 5 trillion economy too.
Continuing on this theme, Mr. Khara, India's fintech ecosystem is the third largest in the world. And even when we look at startups, then, fintechs are really, really prominent. As a legacy bank and, as a bank that is a banker to Indians, what are the challenges of driving competitiveness when you have agile, disruptive fintechs and neobanks?
See, when it comes to fintech, yes, I agree that they're agile, but to be in the financial sector, a very important and the essential component is that one should be fully compliant with the regulations, because eventually in the financial sector, we deal with the money of millions. So naturally, when it comes to the trust factor, the ability of an institution to remain compliant with the regulation becomes supreme. And also, if at all we have to encourage the financial savings in the economy, it is very essential that this trust factor is only enhanced every subsequent day. So having said that, I think we as the leading bank in the country, we will be in a position to consume the solutions being offered by the fintech. And to that extent, it will enhance our agility also. And we will be in a position to do the hyper-personalization. And that is what the model which I feel will evolve going forward. So it's going to be a collaborative efforts between the legacy institutions and the new generation fintechs. And eventually it will be a win-win for all.
So not competitive
I
space.
don't expect that.
Okay. You spoke of digitization, and that has improved financial inclusion. But there are large swaths of India's population that are still deprived. What are the obstacles to full inclusion or the road towards full inclusion? What does full inclusion look like to you?
See, I would say that when it comes to liability side, that is the financial inclusion is quite successful. And the reason behind is that the flow of money is all digital. And but when it comes to the borrowing ability of the customers, there is a concept which we are practicing, but maybe I think the way forward is with the bureau informations being available in greater number, and the bureaus covering a larger population of the country, banks' confidence in lending to individuals will certainly grow. So eventually, I think that is something which will hold the key for ensuring that the financial inclusion, even on the borrowing side, will also be complete. Having said that, another factor is also there. As a society, we don't believe in borrowing as much on an individual level. So when we look at the per capita borrowing to the GDP across the various nations, India is having much lower per capita borrowing to the GDP ratio as compared to many of the developed countries. So I think that also comes with the stage of development, as the development as we move from developing to developed status, the certainty of the income also encourages people to borrow. So this will be a behavior which we'll witness over a period of time, and that will perhaps improve the per capita borrowing also in the economy.
All right, and then that would, of course, go on to strengthen financial inclusion. In December 2022, the government of India launched the e-rupee, the central bank-backed digital currency. At that time, you said that, it will improve monetary transmission, it could possibly be a game changer. But given the fact, and, you alluded to it, that we already have a widespread digital payments ecosystem, what is the role that you see this e-rupee play? And, how do you think it will transform financial services?
See, eventually, if you look at the central bank digital currency, it has got the sovereign backing. One part is the digital payment system. The second part is the sovereign endorsement to the currency. So the sovereign endorsement to the currency enhances the confidence into the instrument. It has got embedded feature of the payment, electronic payment, but it enhances the acceptability. And I think for an economy like India, perhaps CBDC is the best of the model.
Okay, and you continue to believe that,
yes, I continue
that CBDCs will drive.
Yes. Absolutely. I think considering whatever we have seen with various other alternate instruments which are there in the market, CBDC is something which stays, and the value of the currency is something which is maintained. Currency should be like that.
We've seen also a lot of bank collapses recently, and most notably in the United States. What are the lessons in it for India? And in terms of a regulatory response, moving forward, do you think that will evolve?
I would say that as compared to what happened in US, particularly on the bank failure front, essentially it is attributed to some lopsided policy in terms of concentration of liability and concentration of assets, the ALM mismatch, and the sudden increase in interest rates, which led to the MTM losses for those banks. So these are some of the factors which led to the failure of the banks in US. And also the other piece is that some of the smaller banks were not under as much of oversight of the regulator as perhaps the bigger banks were. So to my mind, if at all we have to contain the contagion, the whole sector needs to be subject to strict oversight, which actually we are witnessing in our country. You would have observed that RBI is now the regulator not only for the banks, they are also the regulator for NBFC and even for the cooperative banks. So to that extent, we have a very comprehensive coverage of oversight and regulation. And the second important factor is that ALM and those kind of mismatches are very much part of focus for the boards of the banks, and also it is being overseen by the regulator. So I think to that extent, the regulatory regime in India is much more robust, and that is one of the reasons why, touch wood, we have not witnessed any challenges.
All right, and may it continue to be so. This is now my last question to you, Mr. Khara, and it has to do with MSMEs. MSMEs are called the backbone of the Indian economy, but we all know that, they have their own challenges, and data suggests that only 14% of these MSMEs, 63 million MSMEs that we have access to formal credit. So obviously there are large white spaces as far as the lending ecosystem is concerned. While some MSMEs are credit-worthy and some maybe not, what are the challenges from the banking side in lending to these MSMEs, and what sort of a role do you see SBI continue to play when it comes to strengthening the MSME ecosystem?
Yeah, you're right in saying that, because essentially it's the credibility and the confidence gap with the banking system which has created a scenario like that. But of late, what we are observing is that there is enough information available in the ecosystem, maybe through the GSTN, maybe through the bureaus. So that is one of the reasons why even at the banking system level, we have witnessed a growth of about 17-18% last year. So I think that is something which will go a long way in terms of building the confidence. And moreover, for MSMEs up to a particular cutoff level, we have started doing the cash flow based lending. So there is certainty of the cash flow when we look at the GST and returns. We have digitized the processes. We have almost about 850 odd dedicated branches which are only addressing the needs of the SME. All this we have, this initiative we took in about 2 years' time in terms of creating the capability and of processing the MSME's request. And we have also witnessed a growth of almost about 17 to 18% in the MSME. And also as I mentioned, the most important factor for lending to MSME is the visibility of the cash flow, and also now the CGTMSE guarantee also, which has been more rationalized now. Even that will encourage banks to really lend even more to the MSME sector. Also, for addressing the last mile connect, we have entered into co-lending arrangement with 5 such entities. So even that will also enhance our reach when it comes to lending to MSMEs. So it is one of our core focus area, and I'm sure other banks also, because of the enhancement in the ecosystem, will also be in a position to lend even more to the MSMEs.
So the physical and digital, so like a phygital approach is what you're talking
Yes.
about. And that you say has greatly enhanced your ability to service MSMEs. All right, Mr. Khara, thank you so very much for giving us your time and speaking with us here at ET India Rising.
Thank you very much. Thank you.